welcome back. How's it going, man?
I'm good. So what we do now?
Now we're going to go to our next segment, which is going to be about green screen.
Green screen? Well, when would you ever use green screen?
No idea, really.
You can just go location, and then here we are in outer space. Don't need a green screen.
Clearly. But for those of us who do, or those who would like to know how to set up a basic green screen, we're going to show them how.
Okay. Well, I think it's pointless. You never need a green screen. But whatever. If you say so.
Roll it. Hi everybody, welcome to the DIY segment where we're going to talk about the green screen, how to set one up in a very basic, simple way. What we have is, well, a green screen is what you're going to need. Any sort of high-key green will do. It's important that...
Richard! This is last month's episode with... Jeff, this is all going complete pony... Great, this is perfect. This is the absolute epitome of pony right about here. Richard! Richard! Where the hell are you, Richard? Is anyone around here? Hey, you! Yeah, you, janitor boy, come over here. What's the head? Pick up my head. Never mind the body. Pick up my head, you fool. There we go. Right, yes, you. I need you to do something because we're completely out of time here and we got an emergency. I need you to explain to 10 million people how you key out a green screen. Do you understand?
Well, I've never done anything.
I don't care that you've never done it before. Look at me. My head has literally fallen off. Get downstairs to the studio and explain now.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh boy, that Toasty, wow. It is no surprise that his massive head fell off of his body because, oh wow, he is just too much sometimes. However, he's asked me to come down and explain to you all how we key out a green screen. So, I guess without further ado, let's look at that. So, first of all, here's my particular favorite video editor of choice. This is Final Cut. And right here we have our project screen. So let's drag in a piece of footage. In this case, we'll start off with a still picture, and let's see how we key out the green and remove any of the unwanted edges that we don't particularly want. So let's drag that down to our timeline. Now, as we can see right here, right off the bat, the orientation of the picture is wrong. That's not such a big deal right now. We can change that later. So let's look at applying our keyer and see about removing that green. Now, as we can see from the preview there, we're going to only get a portion of that green removed because the green itself is not actually even. It's slightly different shades of green, or hues of green, I should say. So let's apply that anyway and go into our keyer settings and see what we can adjust to make it work. So first of all, we have this color selection. This allows us to choose very carefully how much of any particular hue of color that we want to remove. So as we can see here, the more we move into the yellow portions, the more of that overall green we're going to remove. Now, we don't want to stray too far out of the green, otherwise we might start removing parts of the body that we don't want to remove. So I guess we'll just leave that there. That's fine. That gives us our general color removal. Then we go to our matte tools. Now, this allows us to change the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. Now, in a lot of cases, you just have to sort of play around with this until you get it right. The important thing is, as you manipulate what colors you're taking out, the chances are that you might actually start to lose parts of the object you're trying to retain. So as you notice here, as we sort of change our midtones, we might be starting to lose a portion of our image here. So what we want to do is just sort of move things around until we lose the green, but we retain as much of that original image as we can. Now, that's not too bad. I think we've got it all there. You can actually double check this by doing a very simple little thing that I like to do, which is drag in a color generator, just a solid piece of color, and you can choose white if you like, and that allows you to sort of look and see if there's any spots of white on your figure. Now, you can double check that by moving the color gradient around, and as you can see here, we have touches of blue which are still there. So what we can do is go back to our keyer and just try and move our midtones and highlights around until we pretty sure that we've got a solid object there. Now, as you can see here, we're starting to show through a bit too much of the green again, so we'll need to step up the midtones there. It's always a bit of a fine balancing act to find how much of the figure you're going to retain and how much of it you're inadvertently going to slightly lose. There's always a little bit of give and take there, but I think that covers pretty much it. You also have some other tools here for shrinking and expanding the area around the figure. And that allows you to sort of further take out matte lines and glows and things that you don't really want. And we also have a spill suppression, which helps us eliminate some of the glow from the green screen. Sometimes that's very handy as well. So that gives us a nice, pretty much even coverage there. And there we go. That's about as good as we're probably going to get that image. So the next thing to do, obviously, is we have these unwanted pieces around our figure. So that's when we get to using our mat. This is a garbage mat, also known as a mask. In this case, I'm going to choose an 8-point mask. I'm going to reduce this just a little bit so I can see all the bits that I need to see. And as you can see, our mask is just appearing here. So we can set these to basically these points here, so we can completely cover our object, what we're trying to key out. And do just a little bit of simple manipulation. There we go. So now we'll just remove a bit of the curviness and feather to our mask, and all of a sudden we have a pretty plausible looking Toasty. Now obviously his orientation is completely wrong here, so if we set this to 270, all of a sudden we have him standing exactly the way we need him to be, and scale a bit to get him in the picture. Now, obviously the whole point of this exercise is to composite him into an artificial background. In this case, we're just going to use a picture we have of the Satellite of Red's control room, and we're just going to drag this into our timeline underneath here. And all of a sudden there is Toasty standing within the control room. Now there's a couple of things wrong with this. Obviously his position, he's just floating in midair. Although Toasty can actually do that, it doesn't really look quite as right as it usually does. So we can now, because we've removed all of that other colour and there's nothing interfering with our image, we can move him exactly where we need him to be. Now, the second thing wrong with this picture, as you may have guessed, is Toasty is looking just a little bit more yellow than usual. Has a certain type of gold hue to him, so we're going to change that with our color correction tools. Now we drag that onto the image, and we can begin to look at adding a little bit of blue to the highlights and the midtones, which will give him that more realistic and metallic look that Toasty has in real life. And if we just move those around, we'll sort of get the general gist. And we can sort of add a touch of that. There we go. So all of a sudden he's now looking much more realistic. And of course we can add the exposure, take down the shadows in general, which makes him look a little bit more like he's part of the scene. So there we are. That's a very simple way of compositing and layering an image. So that's how we do that with a still image. Now, let's look and see how we do that with a piece of film. So, last month, Richard showed us how to light a green screen and how to light a figure in front of the green screen. Now that's important because you really want a nice even key. As we saw with the picture here, the biggest problem with the green is that it wasn't even. So we had to do a little bit more manipulation with that image to get rid of the green than perhaps is more desirable. So with this film, you'll notice that the green is actually more even. So let's have a look at it. So here we have the piece of film. I'm going to drag that into my timeline here. And all of a sudden, right off the bat, we can see that the background there, the green screen itself, is a nice even color. And even in the DIY segment from last month, Richard showed us how to use an app on a phone, which allows us to see the silhouette that is going to be desirable for green screen keying. And here we can see him lighting the final figure. So, let's take this piece of film and apply the same sort of set of variables that we just did to the still image and see what we can do about putting these guys in an artificial environment. Now we're going to start it from about here because that's when Richard is no longer standing in front of an object which we can't really key out because he's standing in front of it. So first of all, find our keyer and put it on. And as you can see there, almost right off the bat, a lot of that green has been removed, which speaks volumes about the fact that Richard correctly lit the green screen and the figure in front of it. So now we might need to do a little bit of manipulation here. That's simple enough. We'll just go back to our color tools and our matte tools, and we just need to fine-tune and adjust the midtones and the shadows and the highlights until we have a satisfactory key. There we are. So now what is next? Well, obviously we have a lot more of this scene to remove than in the picture, so let's get straight to that. Let's apply our mask again. Now, as you'll notice down near the feet here, we have a collection of objects here that we don't really want to have in our finished film. So obviously there's a little bit of a cheat we can do there to get rid of that, and that's just as simple as zooming in a little bit, dropping the picture down, and all of a sudden there you have a very simple movie cheat which allows you to remove that portion of the film which is undesirable. Saves you quite a few hours of frame-by-frame removal. And there we have it. So as we move through our timeline, we notice that Richard is actually staying within our mask, which is important because obviously if any part of his body, if a hand went outside of the mask, then we wouldn't see it anymore, so that's not so good. But at the moment, we are okay. Now let's drop in our background. Now we'll use the same background again, and as we can see here, that actually jibes pretty nicely. Now, the cool thing about once you've isolated a portion of film is you can drag these guys around wherever you want them, so you don't have to worry about them standing in any particular place in the room, and the more you zoom in and out, the more it becomes possible to get a sense of space and of depth. And in this case, we want these guys standing more in the foreground, and we put them over the left-hand side here just because we can. And as we see, we have Richard talking about the lighting, standing within our virtual set. Relatively easy key and removal. That took all of about 2 minutes to be able to do, and all of a sudden Richard is now standing in a completely different place to where he was. So there we have it. I hope that explains comprehensively how you key out a green screen and how you do a simple composite into an artificial environment. Next month Sorry, the boss is talking again. I'm going to have to go and get that head to Richard, otherwise I'll never hear the end of it, so stay with us.
Richard! This is last month's episode with... Oh, Jeff. This is all going complete pony...
Did we get that on camera?